These are efforts. I think what we're going to see from this particular network is unprecedented efforts to create new markets where markets have not existed before. Mm-hmm. So a lot of this is being done through the real world asset tokenization frenzy and the push to, move into natural capital, which I know we've talked about for actually a couple years now. And the idea of like securitizing natural resources or the global commons, the world's oceans, rivers, lakes, streams. I always go back to this Larry Fink quote where he says markets like totalitarian governments. Totalitarian governments can pose markets no one wants on the population. This is what happened. This is the China model.
Over the past year, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, one of the most powerful people in the world, has embarked on a wide-sweeping campaign to promote a nascent industry that he says will be worth tens of trillions of dollars in the very near future. According to Fink, real-world assets tokenization is a rapidly developing trend that would redefine investment strategies forever. Real-world assets tokenization converts the rights of diverse assets, from bonds and equity to real estate and cultural assets, into blockchain-based digital tokens. But it extends far beyond the limits of the financial market as we know it today. The aim is basically to convert every real-world asset on-chain as security tokens. And by every asset, we mean everything. Nothing will be spared from this depravity. Everything and anything will be fair game for Fink and his other billionaire elitists to turn into financial assets, essentially turning our entire world into an even larger casino where the house always wins. In an eye-opening piece published earlier this year, popular investigative journalist Whitney Webb and Mark Goodwin, author and editor-in-chief at Bitcoin magazine, discuss at length the true purpose of Larry Fink's Tokenized Incorporated, warning that Fink's aim is to fractionalize not just existing assets and commodities, but the natural world, reducing most living things into Wall Street financial products to be traded on a single universal ledger. According to the article titled Tokenized Incorporated BlackRock's Plan to Own the Fractionalized World, the plan is to pioneer a new asset class based on natural assets and the mechanism to convert them to financial capital. These natural assets will include biological systems that provide clean air, water, food, medicines, and a stable climate, human health, and societal potential. Though the official narrative is that funds raised from the tokenization of our mountains, streams, lakes, and others will aid conservation efforts, Whitney warns that the aim has always been about making the ultra-rich and powerful, like Fink, even richer and more powerful. In a recent TFTC video alongside Mark Goodwin, Whitney discusses the various pieces that make up the global elite's plans for us all: digital IDs, carbon credit systems, and of course, the fractionalization and tokenization of the natural world, so they owe everything and we owe nothing. As we bring you clips from this eye-opening and extremely illuminating discussion, please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks, and enjoy the video.
If we allow ourselves to be onboarded to these digital ID systems and these financial surveillance systems, these programmable, surveillable currencies that they've been developing, then it's going to be much easier for them, once everyone's dependent on those new systems, to force things like carbon credits on people. And I think that's part of the plan, because the same people that are the architects of the digital ID stuff at the UN, people like Mark Carney and Mike Bloomberg, they're all in for this carbon credit stuff. They're arguably architects of that entire system and the whole stakeholder capitalist model and ESG stuff. They love all that stuff. And I don't think they have any intention of abandoning that market just because people don't like it. I think they're waiting for the right time, that once they have people onboarded to these systems enough, and there's this insane surveillance state in place where your face is your ID and all of this stuff. And they can just track everything you do and everywhere you go and whatever. And smartphones become more invasive. And we're at, this point too, where in the next couple of years, all the brain machine interfaces are going to roll out like Neuralink and whatever for commercial use, at least allegedly. It gets kind of crazy then. And I think at that point, it will be much easier for them to impose this kind of stuff that in the current environment would be a hard sell. It becomes a much easier sell once you have those kind of systems in place. And I think that's why like in UN documentation about the SDGs, without digital ID, so many of them just don't work, right? The digital ID stuff in the SDGs is built within SDG 16, which is intimately tied up. I mean, Interpol is the implementing partner for SDG 16. It's about building strong institutions and ensuring peace. But if you look at the nuts and bolts of it, as Ian Davis and I have done in our work on the SDG, specifically SDG 16, it's about completely controlling speech online, complete blanket censorship of dissent is a key part of manufacturing peace here. No one's disagreeing online anymore, so I guess we've solved the hate speech problem. Oh no, well, you just censored the crud out of people talking. That's not exactly the same. Or giving Interpol all this power to basically become a de facto global police organization, which is what it's been angling to be for a very long time, quite frankly. But you have people like I mentioned earlier, the idea of this biometric entry exit thing. That's the SDGs and that's Interpol. It's tied up with the digital ID stuff and the financial inclusion agenda of the UN. But all of this stuff is very bad when you look at, what it's building toward. And if we have that kind of system where peace through mass surveillance.
According to Whitney, not only are all these plans, digital IDs, carbon credit system, and real-world assets tokenization connected, but the plans for them were laid long before the problems requesting this particular set of solutions came into play. She warns that FINK and his billionaire buddies will be particularly interested in landforms that hold a rich deposit of natural resources, especially metals like gold, silver, and copper. Even if such areas are protected for the purpose of conservation, FINK and his cohorts will find a way to destroy them with the promise of offsetting the damage by planting a tree elsewhere. Very cold comfort for a planet they swear will be completely destroyed by 2050 if we don't give up our farms, vehicles, and plastic straws. In their piece, Whitney and Mark reference a 2020 Bloomberg article that exposed how companies like BlackRock, JP Morgan, and Disney were offsetting their carbon footprints by spending a lot of money to save forests that were not in any danger to begin with. According to the Bloomberg article, JP Morgan paid almost $1 million to preserve forest land in eastern Pennsylvania. Disney spent hundreds of thousands to keep the city of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, from aggressively harvesting a forest that surrounds its reservoirs. And BlackRock paid thousands to City of Albany to refrain from cutting trees around its reservoirs. Only, in all of these cases, the land was never threatened. The trees were already part of well-preserved forests. So, if tokenized incorporated becomes a reality, how do we trust these people to do anything to save the planet, not just damage everything to line their pockets?
These are efforts. I think what we're going to see from this particular network is unprecedented efforts to create new markets where markets have not existed before. So a lot of this is being done through the real world asset tokenization frenzy and the push to, move into natural capital, which I know we've talked about for actually a couple years now. And the idea of securitizing natural resources or the global commons, the world's oceans, rivers, lakes, streams, and all of that. The guy that invented, carbon markets really, Richard Sander, who's an ex-Drexel Burnham Lambert guy, and created, helped create derivatives and stuff. He wants to create, a private market, sort of like the carbon market, but for clean air and water. So get ready for your de facto air tax, guys. These are people making money and they want to make markets. And the way this crowd makes markets, I always go back to this Larry Fink quote where he says markets like totalitarian governments. Totalitarian governments can pose markets no one wants on the population. This is what happened. This is the China model, This is why people like Larry Fink love it over there. The federal government comes in to help out the markets. It's centralized control for the purpose of creating controlled markets. And if this was a free market play, people would be like, no, I don't want to, why do we need this stuff? Like, there's no need for it. And they can try and manufacture consent through the need, through climate change, fear mongering and whatever. But at the end of the day, it hasn't worked. So how do they get it? Well, they have to have governments impose it on people. And when you have a complete surveillance panopticon, it's much easier to impose that on people than it otherwise would be. And they have all these markets lined up to impose on us. A lot of it involves, the complete destruction of the natural world, really, and just complete financial madness. I think there's a lot of setups here for this particular system that they've wanted to have in place. If you look at the history of it for many decades, and that it's essentially been building up here. But they need people's consent to do it, right? Because if everyone is in an uproar about it, they don't do it. Unfortunately, I don't know how many people I can necessarily convince about this stuff, but I'm going to keep trying to do my best about it, I guess. But I think a lot of people are being had right now. And I think if you look at the same, at the funders of all of this, it's quite clear the type of world that they've been trying to build. In the case of Biden, the person that's been his tech czar has been former Google CEO Eric Schmidt, who's on the steering committee of the globalist closed-door conference known as Bilderberg with Peter Thiel. They're actually, Newsweek named Thiel and Schmidt the most influential members at Bilderberg on the steering committee, and basically, argued in a 2019 article that Bilderberg factions were divided along their two lines. They agree on a lot more than they don't agree, and they agree on a lot of the stuff discussed at Bilderberg, which ultimately advances this whole global tyranny agenda that a lot of people got wise to during COVID and have seemingly forgotten again. But they back both parties. It's a uniparty. And I think enough people have learned that at one point or another. This election cycle, I don't know when, that continually voting for the lesser of two evils is just, you're still voting for evil, right? Is this really the best we can do? And people say it's the only choice we have. It's not. You can take personal responsibility, build solutions, and also not comply. If we have enough people not comply with the digital ID stuff and the biometric stuff, it won't work. And
a section of the concluding paragraphs of Whitney and Mark's article has an important message for everyone. It reads, "The new face of economic freedom is your face, alongside select credentials, sent to a privately owned database. One ledger to rule them all. Your existence reduced to a JSON string, and your worldly possessions regulated and demarcated by a CUS IP. But at least you got a few half shares of BlackRock's latest Moss on a Rock ETF. This is corporate capture down to the molecule. A ledger entry for the protons in the new and improved fractionalized atom courtesy of Larry Fink and his tokenized ink. The question is whether the world will comply with these ludicrous plans that promise to blemish every sacred thing nature has to offer. Can we still do anything to change what's coming? Or are we stuck on this path forever?" Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you like the information shared in this video, then ensure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.